Hello and welcome to my basic Pandreo guide. In this guide I'm going to break down Pandreo. So to begin, let's talk about his growths and his passive. So his growth rates are 60% HP, 5% strength, 30% magic, 45% dex and speed, 15% defense, 55% res, 30% luck, and 15% build. So just looking at his bases, he's going to be very accurate because of his high dex growth. He's going to be reasonably fast because of his speed. His magic growth is good. His health growth is pretty decent as well. The res is very high. The build is abnormally high for a mage, which is a unique feature of the unit. His passive party animal allows him to be more accurate and have higher avoid based on the number of allies and foes within two spaces. So if there are a lot of things near him, he will be more accurate and more dodgy. And this is a pretty easy condition to meet, so generally it just makes him innately more accurate. I believe it also counts himself, so he's always plus 3% avoid and hit. So very good unit with good bases, pretty solid. So pros and cons of the unit. I would say he has great mid-game availability. You get him on chapter 12, so you get him pretty early into the mid-game. He also has really good bases and growths, and he's a great magic user with a good passive. As for cons, honestly, I don't think he really has many downsides. Maybe his starting speed could be a little bit better, but his speed growth is good enough that with getting some speed fixing abilities like speed +3 or speed taker, or even switching him to mage knight, he'll generally be fast enough to double most things and to avoid being doubled himself. In terms of level of investment for Pandreo, I would say he is a 0 or low investment unit. He starts out on High Priest, which he can stay on, or you can reclass him if you want, but he has very low opportunity cost to running him. So what are Pandreo's best classes? So I would say Sage, Mage Knight, Griffin Knight, and High Priest are his best classes. Now, he starts out in High Priest, and you can leave him on this, but I think this is like the worst of his best classes. It's not his worst class, but it's definitely not as good as the other three options. So Mage Knight, I think, is probably his best, if not like closely tied with Griffin. Mage Knight allows him to use Levin Sword, so if you get silenced, you can still use Levin Sword. That's one advantage of Mage Knight. You also get more build, you get more speed, and you get Chaos Style. You also get more move. So this just allows him to be more aggressive, double more frequently, avoid being doubled himself, and it pushes him over speed thresholds much more easily, so he can be an effective Bolganon / Levin Sword user, hitting really high damage, doubling with good bulk and good defensive stats. Well, decent defensive stats. Mostly in his speed, so like the speed helps him offset getting doubled, so if he gets hit by a single physical hit, he'll usually tank it. Okay, and then on Sage, it's kind of like a hybrid between High Priest and Mage Knight. It's less offensive than Mage Knight. It's still an offensive class. Mage Knight is just better because of the increased speed. Sage allows him to use staves, and he does have A rank on Sage, which is decent. I think that just enables like Fortify. Warp is B, and Rewarp is C rank, so you don't really need the A. It's just kind of nice. I have him on Sage, and he's just okay. I just have him as my dedicated Corrin user. Now on Griffin Knight, he still retains decent magic growth, surprisingly, so he could be a staff / sword user. He would be on Levin Sword. He has 45% magic growth on this class and 65% speed growth. Now Griffin Knight out of the gate is a little bit faster than Mage Knight by 2 points, but Mage Knight does give you the one more build, so it's really only 1 point faster. Both are really strong. I would say Mage Knight's probably on average a little bit better, but Griffin Knight is a solid option for him. Other classes you could consider, Royal Knights would be okay. Royal Knight generally isn't as good as Mage Knight because Mage Knight has tome access, and Royal Knight is just lances and staves, and Flame Lance has higher weight and lower damage than Levin Sword, so in a lot of cases it's just worse. So Mage Knight I would say is just superior to Royal Knight. Now Royal Knight isn't bad. It has kind of like more durability, a little bit more, well, it doesn't have more build, it has the same build, so it actually has the same build as Mage Knight, so honestly I don't really recommend it. It's not a bad class, it's just that it's not that good. It's not like terrible, it's like viable. It can be decent on some units, but I don't recommend it. I think Mage Knight is just strictly better. There's no there's no downside to using Mage Knight, whereas with Royal Knight, Lances is kind of suspect, the weight is higher, and the damage just isn't there. For physical classes, his strength growth is 5%, so I don't recommend it. I would skip all the physical classes. I wouldn't put him on tank. Anything that's physical oriented, I would keep him off. So he wants to stick to like Griffin Knight, Mage Knight, Sage, High Priest. Now the only real advantage of High Priest over Sage is the fact that he can use arts, and he could use the defensive art that gives +5 defense when he's just healing things, but this would be more of a utility role. High Priest is definitely his least damaging role. It also has the worst speed and build of the main classes that make him good. I have him on Sage, but honestly, I'd rather have him on Mage Knight. He'd be so much stronger. Like, just looking at the speed increase, he's getting +3 speed from the build because he uses Bolganon, and it's weighing him down. He gets 2 speed from the speed, and then once he hits level 5, he gets +3 more when he attacks things. So, you know, when he attacks enemy physical with magic and enemy magic with physical, which mostly you're going to be attacking enemy physical with magic, so it's just +3 speed almost constantly. Let's talk about early passives for him. I would say immediately you should get him speed +3. It costs 500 SP and just requires bond rank 9 with Lyn. I did get him mentorship. This was before the well was introduced. After the well, I don't really recommend mentorship. You're better off just saving your SP for better abilities. But I also got him Canter. Now Canter and speed +3 on a Mage Knight frame, he would be doubling a lot of things, and eventually you just want to upgrade him to speed +4. So he would just save up SP, get speed +4, and then maybe eventually speed +5, depending on if you use SP books on him or not, or if he can get to enough SP to get to speed +5. Now Canter Plus is an option, because that's 1000 SP to go from Canter to Canter Plus. So if you want to just keep him on speed +3 and leave him on Mage Knight, you could eventually get Canter Plus for that extra mobility. So I would say that's like those are some of the main things he wants. He can also go for Speed Taker. Now you'll need to get him to 2k SP and also set up kills or just have him kill things. And Speed Taker can be really good on him. The only problem with Speed Taker is if you want to run it, you usually also want to run Speed Plus to get your initial starting speed high, because you kind of want to start out doubling if you can, at least in my opinion, and then double more as you scale your speed off of Speed Taker. Alternatively, you could try to run like a Canter Speed Taker build. You could try to run like a crit build on him if you want with like Wrath. Now that the well is out, you can run more things. You could also run him as a debuffer. Obviously, you wouldn't want Corrin on him if you're running like Draconic Hex, but that could be an option because that's something you can get early. Things from like Erica, I wouldn't really run. She mainly helps units out that deal physical damage with her brace, which is also 3k SP. So it's kind of hard to afford on most units. But he does come with a decent amount of SP, so he can get Canter pretty quickly, but you have to get to chapter 17 and beat it. And then you get Sigurd back, and then you can get Canter on him. But I would say speed +3 should be your priority, and then the rest is really up to you as to what you want. You could run quality time on him if he's not like speed +3 and quality time, if you want him to just kind of be, you know, like a backliner who just chip heals things that he's near, because he's usually near things, and his passive also works when he's near things, so it kind of makes sense. But if you just want to run Corrin on him instead, you get a debuffer who AoE heals when he uses skills, and then if you throw Canter on him and speed, he's very flexible. I think this is pretty nice to have on him. For things like sword power on Roy, if you want to do like 11 sword build, you could do that. Sword power does scale 11 sword damage. Sword power increases damage of all swords. Now obviously you have to be post chapter 19, so you'd have to be on chapter 20 to unlock that. So like right now I actually do have Roy, so I could unlock that on him. And as for emblem rings, Corrin is a really good option for him. It allows him to debuff. It allows him to be a utility unit. So for low investment, you get a shutdown unit who also can one-round some things. Other units that could be good, you could run Lyn on him for the Speed Taker. I don't think he needs it. He tends to be fast enough that he wouldn't need this. Lyn is usually better used on units who need speed fixing to double. Roy, this wouldn't really be good on him. Doesn't really make sense. Leaf could help him double with Bolganon because it's still a heavy tome. So the build increase from Leaf wouldn't be bad. Sigurd, I don't think really makes sense. The build is nice, the Canter is nice, but if you already have Canter, it's redundant. Erica, you can increase his damage by 3 by switching modes. That can be decent. She also increases magic, so Erica actually is a good emblem on him. Ike, probably not the best emblem, unless you want to make him tanky. It's not going to really help him in terms of combat outside of like reducing damage. Lucina, probably not good on him either. Lucina is usually good on Alir for Bondage Shield, and it makes the game much easier. Byleth would be really good on him. You get a speed increase, you get a magic increase, and you get Siege Tome, because you get Thyrsus. And you can also optionally, use Goddess Dance as needed. And you also get Instruct Magic, so pretty powerful. So a lot of good options for him as you enter the middle game. So for equipment and items, depending on what class he's on, you'll have different loadouts, but on a Sage, I would say Bolganon and El Thunder or Thoron are fine, and then you can upgrade them as much as you can. Currently, he's not one of my damage carries. I have a lot of units who are competing for upgrades, so he's just skating by, doubling some things with Bolganon and then poking with El Thunder. He's my Corrin unit, so he's mostly going to be spamming Fire Vein to slow down enemies and to stall them, which means he's not going to be attacking, so upgrading this particular Pandreo would be kind of a waste. He also has heals. He has a physic just in case I need it, and he has 2 heals. The treat staff is nice, so if you do the well nonsense, which I think everyone will start doing, it basically is like somewhere in between mend and heal in terms of power, so it's actually really nice. It has a little bit more oomph to it than heal, so definitely nice to situationally use those. You can also run things like Obstruct, Silence, Warp on him. He can be an excellent Micaiah user once you get her back. So definitely a good utility unit or a damage carry. So he can kind of spec into damage carry or utility depending on what you want him to do. And honestly, he's very low investment, and I think you should probably run him in most of your teams, if not all of your teams. There's really no downside to running him. But if I did have to upgrade his weapons, probably, so you can see these 2 weapons, so Bolgadon +2, he probably doesn't need the hit accuracy, like the hit engraving on it, because of his passive and his dex growth, but Ivy does need that, so she has it. And then Thoron, he could use Thoron similarly. He also can run a Dire Thunder build, so if you want to run that on him, you could put Roy or Ike on that, get it to +4 to +5, he could use that effectively. So he has a lot of options, and then of course for Levin Sword, he would just increase its damage. If he was on Griffin Knight and you want him to be 11 sword unit, you would just get it to like +3 and ideally put an engraving on it. But by this point in time, you're going to have a lot of competition for engravings for your other units. But if you want to make him a dedicated damage carry, you can give him a good engraving. Leaf would be decent. Leaf or Sigurd. Beginnings is bad availability unless you plan on converting a steel sword into 11 sword with it on it already. So you'd have to plan that in advance. But I would say Leaf or Sigurd. And then also, I think this is, what is this, Lucina's? I think Lucina, yeah, this is Lucina's. This one's decent too. It reduces might, but it also reduces weight. So it can help him with doubling, which, doubling is better. L-Surge can be good on Byleth. This is like a real thing. It has pretty good might and really low weight and infinite hit, so you can't really go wrong. And when you pop Thyrsus, like when you pop Byleth and use Thyrsus, this thing has 3 range, which is pretty stupid, but it's pretty huge. So yeah, I think that's it for this one. Definitely like and subscribe if you found this useful. Overall, he's a solid unit, and I do recommend running him. I think I put him on S tier because he's just really good with no investment, which is nice. But yeah, definitely like and subscribe if you found this useful or enjoyed this. Feel free to drop a comment if you agree or disagree with anything in the video, or if you have anything to add. I'm always open to suggestions and feedback, and I'll see you in the next one.